Hi, my name's Elizabeth Miedema, now Schubauer. I'm recently married. For my lesson plan, I'm doing sixth and seventh reading. That's what I teach currently is sixth and seventh grades, all subjects. And I'm going based off of a lesson plan that I am currently doing with them. Uh, I've noticed with my students that there's a lot of issues with understanding literary elements within their standardized testings, and that the curriculum that we have in place just wasn't really accomplishing the goals that they needed for that. So my goal objective is for us to read historical fiction. That's what my students are really into right now, and that I'm going to read aloud Crispin every day, and that we have a discussion question that we do every day, and that'll be attached with my lesson plan and the video in the discussion. And then they all are assigned a Just Right book that's a historical fiction that will match their level, so that way that when they do their discussions reading log that I hand out to them, that they'll understand the questions and the text that they're reading. So every day they have a question. Some days are similar questions, some days are different, just depending on the book and where I think they need to be based on the timeline that I have. It's a several day lesson plan, will probably take us probably almost a month to do. But I have books like Do You Know There's a War On? Jip, which is like a classic. The Sign of the Beaver. Summer of My German Soldier. And Snow Treasure. And several other ones that they got. So again, those were all assigned based off their reading levels that I got based off their state or district map scores and as well as their DRA levels. So there's several core standards that go along with this. Most of it is understanding, doing fluency, understanding literary elements, able to read a text and decipher things. And I did the Common Core standards through South Dakota Department of Education based on both grades 6 and 7, but they're relatively the same, just different levels. They do have a background of knowledge of what historical fiction is. So on the first day, I'm going to ask them, or I guess I should say I did ask them because I have this in ACT right now, what they knew of historical fiction. Most of the students had a pretty good understanding of what historical fiction meant, that it, wasn't real, but it could be based off of true events, and that it's just a story like any other of their stories that a lot of them read fiction right now. They also have an understanding of literary terms like plot, timeline, character, problem. They're getting to the point where they understand figurative language a little bit better. That's one of the characteristics of the students, that they are slowly understanding figurative language. When I say it, there are still times where I have to lead them a little bit, but for the most part, they're doing pretty good on that. Some other characteristics of the students are that they are learning to be good at self-regulating. So this lesson plan will start out with me reading, but then they have to read by themselves, and that they know what is expected of them when they do that and what they need to have done. They know where they're allowed to read, what they need to have with them, how to get rid of distractions while they're reading. They do have a tendency to understand that they have more value in activities that are long term. So by telling them like, hey, this is going to help our map scores and overall understanding of literary elements and historical fiction and other texts, this will help you give them more of an expectation for success and wanting them to achieve a little more. Unfortunately, at the age of middle school, there is a lot of hormones going on and a lot of self-esteem issues, so they aren't as motivated to learn much of anything, unfortunately, at that age. But you can find the right motivation, whether it's extrinsic or intrinsic, to get them to reach their goal. So my task analysis is for them to understand fictional texts and can locate literary elements while they are reading or while they hear reading. In order to do this, they will have to recognize when they have already read the plot or while they're reading the plot. They understand that setting can change, and that setting means not only place, which oftentimes students that think it's just a place is the setting, but it's also the time of the text. Understand that historical fictions have timelines, so a lot of things are changing, and how maybe it applies to the timeline of our actual history, that they're able to discuss with the literary elements as a group. Sometimes they get a little embarrassed talking in groups. So that's something they have to work on, not being nervous to speak up or thinking that they have to make one of their peers think that they are smart or something like that, and that they're able to verbally write down the answers to questions from their own individual reading without assistance from another student or from myself. The sequence of instructional activities goes with, I would begin my lesson with saying, hey, what do you guys know about historical fiction? I would wait for their answer. And as they're going, I try not to lead them anyway. I want to know exactly what they know, where our starting base is. And then from there, I fill in any gaps that they might be missing. I explain to them that we will be daily reading Crispin by Avi aloud, and that we'll read a couple of different chapters. I've been doing about 3 to 4 chapters a day, just because that's about as long as their attention span will allow before I start to lose them, start to doze off, or start to daydream. And then we will discuss a question from the same reading log that they have in their hands. After the daily reading, I will make sure that they know what literary terms I'm asking about. I might say, what's the plot? Oh, remind me, what exactly does plot mean? And then have them go into what the plot of our story is. Then each student is given their historical fiction book that they keep in their book bin, along with their list of discussion questions that is in the form of a reading log. So it has the question, and then it has a space for them to write their answers every day, and it has the chapter labeled. So they will read 1 chapter a day from their individual historical fiction book. Then they will answer their questions. This whole time they are quiet and respectful. They are allowed to be in their known locations, which are the reading carpet, the couches, or at their desks. Those are the areas where they're allowed to read, and they know that. We also have a poster in case they forget on a chart in the back, along with the literary elements. We also have a chart to explain each of those terms if they maybe get a little confused about how is timeline different from setting. So after the reading log is complete, after they've read their chapter and they filled out their reading log, then they're allowed their individual reading time. So this is their IDR time, is what we call it. It's individual reading, where they get to choose their book, whatever genre that they want, that's at their level of reading. And then they get to read that. Normally, I give them about a half hour to read that. If other time allows, let me maybe expand on it a little bit. But I will check weekly their reading logs to ensure that they are not only understanding their texts, but they have complete, accurate answers on their reading logs. Sometimes students this age can get a little lackadaisical and might have 3 or 4 words that aren't going to answer the question as fully as they probably need to be. So that's something that I look at, that they're getting their full potential in their answers. If they are struggling in their reading, then I will give them a different book. I'll say, hey, this obviously is maybe a little too high for us. Let's try this other book that might be a better level for you. And that way you can actually understand what you're reading, and you'll be able to answer these questions without being frustrated or confused. The grading for this lesson is going to be just a rubric from 0 to 5. 0 means uncompleted. They aren't reading. They aren't engaging in the reading log. They're not engaging in discussion. Up to 5, where they are doing all their reading in a timely fashion. They are accurately understanding and answering the questions, and that they are actively discussing in our group setting.